We are going to be transitioning from the connectedness data to some of our school safety data in just a second here. I think it's important to note that on some of these questions, and Renee, can we go to the next slide? If we look at the students reporting feelings about their safety in school, back in the 2018-2019 school year, looking at the 2018 data, there was some speculation that part of that jump in students reporting that they were feeling worried or very worried about their safety related to political climate and just some of the conversation that was evolving culturally, within the schools and beyond the schools. It's also important for us to note that in this year's data, the questions did not really, in a very, very clear way, distinguish between physical safety and emotional safety. And some of these safety questions, we had some questions as to whether students were reporting some of these unsafe feelings in response to the ongoing pandemic, beyond other threats to student safety in school. But as we look at this data, we actually do see a return to a slightly lower level than the 2018 data at the high school level. We see a continued slight climb at the middle school level. And each year successively, we are seeing increased concern for safety, with sort of leveling out with the 11th and 12th graders. But again, coming back to that information about the experiences of our gender nonconforming students, you'll see that there's a pretty significant, more than twice and more than 4 times the self-reported feelings of worry or very worried about safety in school as compared to female or male students respectively. And again, that just sort of highlights the difference between how our female students and our male students are feeling, with female students reporting at twice the rate of their male peers that they are somewhat or very worried about safety in school. And you'll see that there will be some data in an upcoming slide that again suggests that our female students are experiencing safety concerns that we really need to better understand and continue to work on school culture in order to make sure that all of our students are feeling safe. But if we jump to the next slide, so we were just looking at worried about safety in school, and we'll see that many of those concerns persist outside of school. The numbers are actually slightly lower. Again, there are questions here that we had as a wellness committee, clearly this is not just a school problem where these same concerns exist in the community, but we're wondering about this question of, did students who were responding to this survey interpret this with regard to physical safety, psychological safety, or both? And does the ongoing pandemic have some impact on how students are feeling with regard to their safety in school? Again, you'll see that some of those same trends hold with a little bit of a return to our pre 2018 baseline. Actually, at the middle school, they were reporting sort of their lowest degree of concern about safety when not in school over the course of the trend data. High school, the lowest as well, but a little bit more of a pronounced return to that. And again, just in 2018, when this survey was administered, there was some very public unrest, both nationally, and it was in the immediate aftermath of some incidents here in Newton as well, including the Confederate flag incident, and just some things that were very much a part of the discussion that led to some elevated numbers in 2018. So we see this as a bit of a return to a baseline. But again, as has been the case, gender nonconforming youth, both in school and in the community, reporting significantly higher rates of feeling unsafe than their male or female peers. If we can go to the next slide, Renee.
Okay, I think back to me. So here we have students were asked about skipping school, because they felt unsafe on their way to or from school for the past 30 days when this survey was administered. And so in the high school, overall 19% of high school students skipped school because they felt that they were unsafe on their way to or from school in their past 30 days. With the 12th grade, were more likely to skip school because they felt unsafe. Then respectively, 11th, 10th, 9th, the percentages went down respectively. From a gender perspective, female and gender nonconforming students were more likely to skip school because they felt unsafe on their way to or from school. Then male students were at 14%. Our Black students were more likely to skip school because they felt unsafe at 27%. Then multiracial students and students of another race, white students, and then the percentages go down from that standpoint. Trending, the percentage of Newton High School students who skipped school because they felt unsafe on their way increased about from 2018 to 2022, more than 100%. And from a statewide perspective, in 2022, high school students were more than 3 times as likely to report skipping school because they felt unsafe, 19% versus 6%. Middle school, then we see that data a lot lower. 4% of the middle school felt within their last 30 days if they were going to feel unsafe and they skipped school to or from school. They were similar across the grades when it came to middle school. Again, we see a bit of an uptake for our gender nonconforming students and as well as our Black students as well. And then those trends of the middle school students who skipped, that had increased from 2012, and there's no statewide comparison data from that standpoint. So student safety is something, it is incredibly paramount and really looking to see from both in school and out school as well. Then if we can go to the next slide. So this is a bit jarring. I'm just going to put that out there. We're talking about carrying a weapon on school property for the past 30 days. So among students who have carried a weapon in the past 30 days, this is saying in high school, who carried a weapon, 21% of students carried a weapon on school property during that past 20 days. 12th grade were the least likely. So our younger students reported that they had the higher percentages of carrying a weapon. And we get back to some gender nonconforming data, striking 44% felt or reported that they had carried a weapon. And as well as our Black and multiracial students were more likely to carry a weapon on school property. This was a new question. There was no statewide data as well. We just wanted to get a chance to see like what's going on from that standpoint. And this was only asked of high school students at this time.
Beth, can I just add on to the slide here? So what this is saying is not 21% of the total high school students carried a weapon.
Right.
So 105 students responded to that question. Did they ever carry a weapon in the past 30 days? So 105 students said yes, but 21% of the 105 students, which is about 22 students, carried the weapon into school.
Thank you. Yes, that's going to be a much more reasonable. Well, it's still an incredibly, drawing slide to a certain percentage, but it is not 20% of our entire senior class. And that's an awesome distinction that way. Thank you. Next slide. And Dan, it is back to you.
Yep, back to me here. So this next slide looks at student reactions to witnessing bullying behavior. It's important to note that the 2022 YRBS defined bullying as when one or more students tease, threaten, spread rumors about, hit, shove, or hurt another student over and over again. It's not bullying when two students of about the same strength or power dynamic argue or fight or tease each other in a friendly way. And there, you'll see the next slide will ask some questions about electronic bullying. And electronic bullying is things like someone spreading a rumor or something untrue online, sending someone a threatening or aggressive message, maybe posting an embarrassing picture or something without permission, or taking private messages and making them public. So one of the really just things of note that we saw was at the middle school level, we are seeing more upstander behavior, more intervention than at the high school level. So at the middle school level, if we're digging into this data, you're seeing that very few students, and this is true at the high school as well, very few students who witnessed bullying taking place took part in that bullying. But at the middle school level, fewer than half of students, in fact, only a third of students in this most recent trend year were reporting that they just watched it happen and didn't do anything. A lower number than in the past were trying to intervene by getting the support of an adult or intervening directly. Slightly more actually with an adult, my apologies, but a lower number intervening themselves as an upstander. At the high school level, similarly, actually a significant number of students and a consistent trend across time were reporting just sort of seeing it happen, but a reduced number of students were trying to intervene directly, and a slightly increased number were trying to intervene by telling a counselor or a teacher or another adult in the building what they saw was going on. This is an area where at the high school level, our anti-bullying work has been a lot on building connection, on our courageous conversations discussions. There's actually been a little bit less of structured lessons around upstander and bystander behavior. It's a component of all of our culture and climate work that we're doing, but it certainly made us wonder if there needs to be more of a focus again on ways to intervene and upstander behavior at the high school level specifically. As we look at the next slide again, electronic bullying specifically. So what you see on this slide, there's some trend data for high schools. This is the first time this question has been asked of middle school students, so we do not have that trend data. But I think it's very important to note that while it looks like there is significantly more electronic bullying at the middle school level, and there may be a greater number of incidences of it just in terms of developmental stages and maturity, it's important to note this is not an apples to apples comparison. The high school data is looking at students who were reporting experiencing electronic bullying within the past 30 days, while the middle school data is looking at students who have reported ever experiencing electronic bullying. So it is not surprising that the middle school data is higher. It would be interesting to see longitudinally for a cohort, does that behavior diminish over time? And ultimately, as we begin to develop more trend data for the middle school level, we might see that. But at the high school level, if you just look at the year over year reporting, it's actually fairly consistent. We see it decreasing marginally each year. So 12% with grades 9 and 10, down to 11% with grade 11, 10% with grade 12. But as has been the case a number of times this evening with our data, you will see that gender nonconforming youth are reporting experiencing online bullying at twice the rate of female students and about 2.5 times the rate of male students.
We're hoping to be able to get school-specific reports so that the school leaders can take a look at their specific data and then figure out how to analyze that data by subgroup and then develop action plans to best address the needs that are highlighted. So I would imagine that would be the next step, that we would share this more broadly with teams at their specific schools.
Yeah, and I would just add, as we look at some of those, the macro trends, the concern we certainly have for our gender nonconforming students and their experiences from the big picture holistic look at this data causes us to certainly double down on the professional development and support we're providing for educators around how to better include and support gender nonconforming students, as well as thinking more about what different programmatic efforts and other work we can do to support them. And then within the smaller patterns within specific items and groups of items, I know that directly impacts changes in points of emphasis that the group of experts that help present today, whether it's our health and wellness curriculum, our counseling work that we do, that both tier 1 and more responsive things, psychologists and our therapeutic staff, like this feeds directly into so much of the work that you guys all lead. And I'm looking at Beth and Dana and Dan and Art, among others. And so I think that's a huge part of it too, and trying to move the needle on some of these. And I think there's a number of slides where Dana and others were able to reference places we've seen the needle move back in the right direction when we've been able to make changes to curriculum, when we've been able to make changes to the work we're doing in counseling and other support services, as well as just through our general academic program. So that's important, as well as areas where we still have a lot of work to do. So I hope that's a big picture. I don't know if anybody wants to give it a more specific example. Like you said, COVID's hard to name all the different things because there is so much information here, but it's invaluable to the work that we're doing.